Thank you for listening to our daily devotional. The devotional today is Am I Using the Nevertheless Clause by Jack Williams.
Like there are so many choices before each and every one of us, and it's really nothing new. In the book of Joshua, the 24th chapter and verse 15, Joshua was seeking to prepare the Lord's people, and he told them to serve God, but he says, if that seems bad, evil to you, he says, choose this day whom you will serve. And the choices were all in the world, but then he said, as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. And the choices were there. People made choices, then they faced other struggles, and they backed away from them. You get to the New Testament, and you think, well, things are going to be different, but really they're not. In the book of Matthew, the 7th chapter, verse 13 and 14, the Lord warned people there in the Sermon on the Mount that there are two ways. There's a broad way that leads to destruction. There's a narrow way that leads to that heavenly home, to salvation. And again, so many times we can say we're going to do this, and then the challenges get there, and it seems so very hard. And whenever we make the choices, it causes so much of an uproar in our lives. And the Lord knew that in Luke the 6th chapter, in verse 26. He says, woe unto you when all men speak well of you. You see, living the way of God brings challenges in so many realms, but even those around you, they can begin to ridicule you, speak evil of you. And so it just becomes such a struggle. And, I wish I could tell you that, as a Christian, it gets easier and easier, but really it doesn't. It does in one regard because you know of certain tools you can use, but the hurt is there, the struggle is there, the discouragement is always there. And you look and you think, well, how is it that I'm going to overcome this? Well, God promised in 1 Corinthians the 10th chapter and verse 13 that there's no temptation that has taken us, but such is common to man. In other words, other people face it just like you and I. But then he says that God is faithful. He will not suffer you to be tempted above that you're able to bear, but will with the temptation provide a way of escape that you can bear it. And so what I need to do is find the door of escape. I noticed on a commercial the other day, there's someplace in Kansas City, and I think it's just called Escape. And you pay for them to lock you in someplace, and you got to figure out how to get out. I want to be on the money receiving end of that. But they get in there and it's just a puzzle. I think the record was like 45 minutes that somebody got out earliest, and I don't know how many hours before they just come in and get you out and say, you're done. But sometimes life kind of seems like that because we're looking for the door, and it seems like, where is it? How am I going to get this way of escape? Well, if you think about Jesus Christ, I didn't ask Ethan to lead that song, but it was an excellent song that goes with this lesson. That Jesus knows all about your troubles. He will guide you. And so you look at that and you realize that as he does that, he's faced it too. You think about as he ended his ministry, everything was leading up to it. He knew that he had to do certain things, that all this could be fulfilled, and he ultimately went to the cross. I've studied about that. I wept about it. I prayed about it. It's just such an amazing thing to read about what our Lord went through. And you think, how is it that he was able to accomplish that? You realize, as he said in the garden, he could have called 12 legions of angels at any time. Just put a stop to it. But he didn't. Whenever he went, he did so, and he knew not only that the price had to be paid, but I believe that he knew, I think part of it was encompassed in the fact in verse 21 of 1 Peter 2, that he suffered and died for us, leaving us an example. And so how do you face this? Well, one of the things, you look to Jesus. And whenever I think about him, I think about, you can have a safe word. I'm going to use an escape clause. Well, Jesus in essence had an escape clause that he spoke. And it was the way of Him showing us how we too can bear things and how we face them and how we just make this decision. I'm going to overcome. I'm not going to be overcome myself. I'm going to be the overcomer. And it's the nevertheless. Whenever you read in Matthew the 26th chapter in verse 39, He went a little further, He fell on His face, and He prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if there be possible, let this cup pass from me." He knew the agony before Him. He knew what He had already suffered. He knew the horrors of the cross, and He said, if there is any way, let this cup pass from me. But the very next word, nevertheless. Nevertheless, not as I will, but Thou wilt. The same thing repeated in Mark's account in chapter 14 and verse 36, and Luke 22 and verse 42, as He knew what was before Him. But He said, nevertheless, not my will. We need to understand that as we go through life, we're going to face struggles, we're going to face hardship, we're going to face trials, we're going to face decisions that just, you look at them and you think, I don't know if I can do that. And that's the time that we step back, just as Jesus did. We step back and we look, and we realize how hard it is. We realize the struggles that are not only in that decision itself, but what's going to come after the decision. But you just take a breath. You say, nevertheless, not my will, but Thine. Because it's going to be my will that says, well, I'm going to avoid this. I'm going to do this instead. I'm not going to suffer this ridicule. I'm not going to... But then you come back and you think about Jesus and you say, nevertheless, not my will, but Thine.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this devotional. If we can answer any questions or you have comments for us, please contact us. We'd love to hear from you. And if we can help you in any way to realize the way of escape by the nevertheless clause, looking to God instead of self, we'd be more than happy to help you.